folks. Thank you for joining the show. We are just getting started. It is going to be a fantastic show. I'm going to get our guest in here, and we are ready to rock and roll. Hello, friends. Uncle Marv here with another episode of the IT Business Podcast. It is your podcast for IT business support, where we help you run your business better, smarter, and faster. And we try to do that every week by bringing you great guests. We talk about product stories and features, all of those things that help us do our networking jobs better. We are doing a very good job of that tonight with my guest. I am bringing in one of the people that I think is a hero in the channel, JB Fowler from Domotz. JB, how are you?
I am awesome. Uncle Marv, how are you?
I am doing pretty good.
By the way, I love the whole Uncle Marv thing, right? I know you more professionally as Marvin, but Uncle Marv, it fits.
Well, it's something that, I don't know if she'll watch this, but the wife has hated it for years.
That's funny. Let's not tell her. Let's make sure she doesn't notice, okay?
I'm like, dear, but I am an uncle. So, it is funny. And you're the king of dad jokes, I hear. So
I've had a few dad jokes in my time. I didn't prepare anything for you right now, so I apologize for that. But yeah, I've been known to do that.
All right, so let's tell everybody real quick. If you are joining us for the very first time, thank you very much. If you are a regular listener, thank you very much as well. For those of you that don't know the show, this is, as I mentioned earlier, the IT Business Podcast. It is presented to you by NetAlly, and I have to give a nice shout out to them because NetAlly has been a fantastic partner to us. They are the #1 ally for network professionals around the world. And for 25 years, they have provided best-in-class tools and software, enabling your team to more effectively plan, install, validate, and troubleshoot important wired and wireless networks. And I do have some stories that I'm going to share on some later podcasts of how they have done just that. Our live show is sponsored by Computers Done Right. They are a managed IT services company providing support and management in Southwest Florida, basically around the Venice, Fort Myers area. Not only do they do your managed services, your computer repair, virus removal, they also assist with website design and social media marketing. So for all your computer needs, go to computersdoneright.com. And I want to once again pitch our fantastic Tech to Tech conference happening this September 16th through the 18th in Chicago, the 22nd annual TechCon Unplugged. This is hosted by our good friends Rick and Paco over at MSP Unplugged. It is probably one of the premier conferences if you want to get up and close and personal with other IT business owners, vendors in the channel, and have those conversations that we talk so much about. You know, the big thing about conferences is everything happens in the hallways and in the private sessions. Well, this is one of those conferences where we're going to be able to do that. I am going to be your MC for the weekend. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's going to be my job to help shuffle people from one place to the other because workshops are back. So there will be the breakout sessions where you can go and get more intimate with people on some of the specific topics. So techconunplugged.com. I believe that there are a few tickets still available. So if you head over to the website to get your ticket, be sure to use the discount code ITBP75 off, and that'll give you $75 off the ticket price. And if you're going, we'll see you there. All right.
I have to say, Marv, right? TechCon, great place, right? In fact, I was at another event just last week and was visiting with Paco, as a matter of fact. Great guy, very knowledgeable, right? He's awesome. He's awesome. So it's a good venue.
Been a friend for years.
Yeah.
So Speaking of friends, let me do this right off the start. I want to give a public thank you. I've thanked you in private, and I've spoken on your behalf to other people in the industry. But I want to thank you for two things. First of all, you introduced me to Shanna Utgard with Defendingify,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
they have become a friend of the show, and I have actually started using their products, and they have come in handy for several of my law firms that needed some of their cybersecurity tools. And so I want to thank you for that introduction, and it's been very good.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shanna's amazing, right? She's experienced in the world of cybersecurity and dealing with things, but Defendify is just a great platform. I'm very impressed with it, quite frankly. So I'm glad that you've gotten some let's say good use out of that introduction.
Yes, and some good stories from Shanna.
No, she absolutely has some stories. That is true. It seems like
Yeah.
every time I talk to her, which is probably once every 6 to 8 weeks, there's something new that has happened.
Yes. And we're going to find out something really good, I think, now, because she just came off of a 10-day vacation.
Oh,
So I can't wait to hear those stories. So I'm trying to get in touch with her and get her on the show to find out what happened. The second thing I want to say thank you for is the way in which your company conducts business.
okay.
So when I, reached out to you guys, purchased your first box, you guys were very helpful, very friendly, not pushy with your services, and you were very open and honest with what it did and did not do,
Mhm.
and I appreciate that. And then you've continued that same practice. I think it's been now 3 years
Yeah.
that I've been using your stuff, and it's just been refreshing. Um, Unlike a vendor who called me yesterday
Uh-oh.
and kind of irked me. Well, let's just say it pissed me off. It's
Yeah,
basically.
okay. You can say it. You can say it. It's your show, Marv.
I mean, first of all, I already used one of their products, so it's not like I'm a prospect.
Mhm.
They tried to trick me by saying, "Hey, we want to invite you to this conference as a, featured speaker, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "Is it because of my podcast?" And I'm like, "Oh no, as your MSP." And I'm like, "Okay." And we get on the call, and basically I got shuffled off to the sales guy, who immediately went into sales mode with, "So how many endpoints do you have? And what are you looking to do? And who is your current provider that we can switch you from?" And I'm like, "That's not why we're on this call."
Total bait and switch.
Yeah.
Not appropriate.
Which I mean, I get, but just be open and honest up front. I probably still would have taken the call just to see, um, but you just flat out lied is, in my opinion, what happened. And then he was all snooty when he was like, "Well, I was trying to help you. Sorry, we couldn't do that today." And, bye-bye. And I was like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, that's just wrong. Wasting time. No, I'm very sensitive to that, right? I've actually been in your shoes where you have vendors coming to you trying to sell services, sell products, and the last thing that I ever want somebody to feel like is that they're talking to a used car salesman. Right? And if there's any used car salesmen on this podcast, I'm sorry, but the my thought process here is that I want you to feel like you can talk to us about anything. You can use us. I'm going to be honest with you on, what we can and can't do, because the worst thing that can happen is I sell you on a product, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it would be, and then we both have problems at that point. So I want to be fair. I want to be honest, right? It has to be a win-win situation, right? That's what this
Yeah.
is about. So the more successful I can make you, the more successful we as a company are going to be too. That's kind of my philosophy.
And it has been great. And I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical in the beginning. I'm like, "Oh, okay, just a little box, All right, let's see what it can do." But since then, I have purchased many boxes, and I even branded.
Mhm.
You had to buy 25, so people don't think you can just brand just one. But I
Yeah,
got
right.
25 with my logo on them, and I use them for a number of reasons, and we'll talk about some of those going forward. But before we do that, I want to do one more story.
Okay.
I feel like I'm hijacking the show, but I just need to say that. So for a couple of months, probably 2 months, maybe more, one of my clients had been complaining about Zoom. And in the beginning, everybody kind of just, blew it off as to, oh, user error. There
Mhm.
was an older attorney who were like, yeah, he just doesn't know what he's doing. People were complaining that they couldn't hear him. He was getting disconnected. Well, come to find out that others were experiencing this as well, especially if it was multiple people in the office trying to do Zoom at the same time, if they were trying to do a partner meeting or something like that. And every time we would try to do a test, I would do a Zoom call from my office with them. And, for the most part, it was fine. And then every now and then it would disconnect, but not on my end, just on their end.
Mhm.
So we were trying to troubleshoot it. We were, going through the ISP. We were, I did look at the firewall. I'll be honest. I did, try to see, well, maybe the firewall's, dropping stuff. But no issues with the firewall, no issues with any other thing on the network. And I'm like, well, it must be Zoom. We've heard, it must be Zoom.
Yeah, of course.
And it just got to a point where the attorney, the managing partner, he's like, we've got to figure something out. And he said, you've got all this stuff at your disposal. Can't you find out what's going on? Do we have to call somebody else? And I'm like, no. And so I went back through and started going again, looking at all my stuff. And it was so funny. I'm looking at my Domotz box because I've got a physical box on site there. And one of the things that your box does is it has a constant ping going out to devices and giving the RTD.
Right.
And, looking on the surface, I've got a little green. And I'm thinking, okay, that's really no big deal. But when I finally decided to hover over it, I saw that the average was like 50 to 143 milliseconds, which I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, that might be a little high. So I go to dig into it, and what do you know? Lost packets.
Sure.
And again, not to the point where they're getting completely disconnected. And it was only on the inside of the firewall.
Yeah.
So it was, inside the firewall on the LAN side that they were losing these connections. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And at first we thought, well, maybe it's a cable, and we went out and replaced the cable, and that seemed to work for about a day. And then it came back. And then I just said to the customer, look, we just replaced the firewall at this point, which we did. No problem since.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Was it a firewall?
It
Right. That you had
ended
to
up being, as far as we can tell, it was the firewall because we had changed cables. We changed cables 3 times. I didn't tell the whole story
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it can't be the firewall. Everything else is working.
So other people were having this problem. Like everybody that was using Zoom was having this
Yes.
problem. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it's probably where data got aggregated to a point, right? And so this is an interesting story. So the round trip delay is really a feature that we implemented. Just to go into the technical side, we are essentially doing ICMP requests, right? Or also known as a ping to each device. We do that every 30 seconds from the point of view of that collector or the agent. And so what it's doing is while it's checking the online offline status, it's just recording that how many milliseconds it takes to get the response. So we started aggregating that data. And as you rightfully saw, you can go in there and look at a 30-day history of all these pings, right? The average pings, and you can look at packet drops. So that's how it works. Now, I was intrigued when you said you thought it was probably a cable or potentially a cable issue, because I had a situation very similar to what you're saying where in my house, I have a smart display, a smart TV. It's a Sony TV that I have wired into some connections. But these wires, because of the location of the TV, go through a couple keystone jacks. And as you know, keystones can be problematic for the network. I ended up having a problem where one of my keystones were bad. It was broken, but I detected this because of Domotz doing the round trip delay and seeing packet drops, exactly like you saw. So during points of high activity that was going on, I would see that the TV would stop communicating with the rest of my system. And lo and behold, I discovered it through the round trip delay, and I found out where this bad keystone was.
So I just, for people that don't use, a lot of the features in here, I mean, I had seen that. I've used it to look at other stuff and Wi-Fi devices. I'm used to having, that high, latency and stuff.
Sure.
And I
Yeah.
expected it. And it was just funny that I only decided to look at it because I wanted to look beyond the green.
Yeah.
Because I figured, well, if it's green, it's good, right?
So are you aware of the fact, Marvin, that you can actually go in and on critical devices or critical paths like this firewall, or let's even say like an access point, you can put alerts for high percentages of packet drops. So if you want to say, alert me whenever there's more than 10% packet loss on a particular port, you can do that within Domotz.
Well, I had seen that at the bottom because I think the default is like 100 milliseconds and 15% packet loss.
The way that works, just so you know, is when Domotz starts to do the latency testing, it will start to, over time, it will look at what the average is for a particular system, and it will make a suggestion, right? Using some algorithms that we have, call it AI if you want. It'll make a suggestion as to what would be a high latency for this particular device. And then you can set that alert. Now, you also can go in and just set it to a value that you want. If you believe that 48 milliseconds is where I want to alert, you can set that as well. But we offered up some suggestions, which is kind of cool.
Okay. Well, I just left it at what was suggested, and that's why I'm looking at the device right now, and that's what it was 100 milliseconds and 15. And so that's what I left it at. I didn't think about changing it to a lower number because apparently, it wasn't higher than that, but it was enough to cause issues during these Zoom calls.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
But
absolutely.
of course, it didn't prevent them from browsing, obviously. The internet speeds were fine. Every now and then somebody complained about a remote access, VPN being disconnected.
Yes.
Of course, we blame that on it must be your home internet.
Yeah. Come to find out, it was this firewall issue.
And I talked to the office manager today, and she said, "Yeah, not one complaint about anything since we made that change."
Perfect.
So
this is a awesome example about how a network monitoring tool like Domotz is so valuable. Right? I mean, it helped you with troubleshooting. It helped you with kind of isolating the device, right? That was bad, and solved your problem, and hopefully your customer's happy. I mean, for the $21 a month that this is, well worth it.
Yeah. So why don't we do this? Let's go back and that's for people that might be new, because there might be. Let us just do a quick rundown of who Domotz is and what the box is.
Happy to do that. And in fact, let's talk about this first, but then if we want to do a demo, we can share that screen too. So Domotz is a network monitoring and management platform. We are a software as a service. We're a cloud-based company. I should point out as well, it's a multi-tenant platform. So you as a service provider or anybody that's trying to deal with multiple end customers, they have a single platform, a single dashboard where they can see all of their clients and get status and go in and out of those clients very easily. As a network monitoring and management tool, there's really three fundamental principles that we try to help the service provider with. And let me say, as a tool, right, we are trying to help you be more efficient, right? We're trying to help you save labor. We're helping you save time when it comes to deployments of systems as well as monitoring those systems. So that's thing number one, or call it principle number one of what we're trying to do at Domotz. Principle number two, I would tell you, is we want you to look like a hero. Okay. And Marv, the example you just gave, I think is a really good example where Domotz helped you successfully isolate a problem and resolve an issue with the clients. I would maybe make the argument that if you had put alerts on that, you could have probably solved that even faster. Right. And in my mind, that's a core value of what Domotz does, right? We want to help you save costs. We want to help you troubleshoot networks, and we want to make you look like a hero. So that way you can continue to service these customers that you have. So those are the principles. How do we do this? One is we help with inventory and asset management. Let's say network-based asset management. So when a Domotz agent, right, or that collector gets plugged into the network, right, we're going to immediately scan that network. We're going to discover all the devices that are on that network. We're going to look at the layer 2 side of that network. So we're going to look at the VLANs. We're going to come back with MAC addresses. But more importantly, and this is where Domotz really starts to differentiate itself, we're going to take those MAC addresses and we're going to classify them by make, model, and type. So we're going to tell you that there are security cameras. We're going to tell you that there are access control systems, building automation systems, point of sale systems. And of course, we're going to talk or show you laptops, PCs, servers, the network infrastructure. We're going to take and classify all that so that you don't have to. Okay, we're going to try to do our best to name these devices. I will say that we are not a documentation tool, but we integrate really well with documentation tools. So taking all of that information that we discover and putting that into the platform that you utilize as a service provider is something that we do very, very well. And we integrate with a lot of the different platforms out there, whether it's things like IT Portal, IT Glue, Hoodoo, whatever it may be. LionGuard, right? Another system that's out there for data aggregation. So all of these ones that you use quite often, we integrate with. So inventory, asset management, right? That's a core value that we get at. And by the way, we'll talk about maybe some CIS controls. CIS control number 1, it's critical that you know what's on your network. Okay, so that we help solve that. Thing number 2 that we do here is really around network management. So understanding the routers, the firewalls, the network switches, the wireless access points, right? Putting those into a common platform, regardless of the manufacturer, okay? Whether you're using Meraki or you're using Ubiquiti or you're using Cisco and Juniper and HP, whatever it may be, right? We're going to bring that into a platform that allows you to understand what this network infrastructure looks like. And then we're also going to help map out that topology. One of the things that we do within this network infrastructure is we will generate a topology map all the way from the cloud connection, right, through the modem or the fiber connection, all the way down to the last endpoint. We're going to map all that out, even across different VLANs, okay, or subnets, depending on how you set the system up. The network management 2, one of the core things is we will back up the configuration files in your firewall or configuration files that are in your firewalls and in your managed switches. We do that so that, one, you have a backup. That's kind of the obvious reason. But we also can alert you when a configuration file changes. So if somebody makes adjustments to a managed switch, they add a VLAN, they change a VLAN, we can generate an alert because you as a service provider need to know that. The beauty of Domotz as well, besides that alerting, is that we can do things like restore it for you. Okay, if you wish to push it, a restore remotely, we can do that as well. So that network management, that understanding of the infrastructure, the mapping out of how all of the devices are connected, core value of Domotz, and it's absolutely how service providers use us. The other thing that we do with respect to the monitoring side is we can look at every device that's on the network. We can obviously do online and offline alerting. So if something falls offline, as you rightfully mentioned, we do some network diagnostics as well, where we look at the latency or that round trip delay to devices. We can set alerts on SNMP sensors within these devices if SNMP is enabled. We can look at TCP services, so we can look at things like the control protocols that are out there that go over the Ethernet, right, or Wi-Fi. Things like web-based ports, port 80, port 443, SSH, Telnet, RDP, right? We can check to see if those types of services are running on any device that's in the network. So for us, this is just a huge value add in a way in which, again, by having that proactive monitoring, we think we help service providers. And there's one more thing.
Okay.
That one more thing really has to do with security and awareness of what's going on in the network. First and foremost, we're going to alert you immediately when a new device shows up on any of the VLANs that you're monitoring, okay? Any of the LANs that you have. Very useful for security. Again, it goes back to CIS control number one, which is what's on my network, right? So we do that. The second thing is we look at the firewall. We can look back from the cloud back into the network and see if there are any ports that are open at that firewall. Now, my assumption, you as a service provider, you have a really good handle on what's going on with your firewall. But using Domotz as a secondary check can be beneficial to see, has something changed, or is there something that I'm maybe not aware of? We also look from the inside back out to the network. So if a device on the network is requesting a UPnP, port forward, we make note of that and we can alert you to that. So we view the ability to look at new devices, look at ports being opened, not only at the firewall, but also on individual devices, okay? Because we will scan those devices and bring awareness to those as being a core part of some of the CIS controls. In fact, CIS control number 7 talks specifically about understanding the ports. So security awareness is that third aspect of what Domotz provides as a network monitoring and management tool. So I talked a lot there. I think that really gives a good overview, though, of how we provide service for service providers.
Well, that's fine. And I wanted to let you go because all of those are good points. So, of course, I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, it does that. I've done that. I've done that.
Yeah,
I've looked at all that. I mean, I'll just say this, and I don't know. It's been a while since I've had you on. So some of the things that I've done is I've turned off alerting from my RMM and
Yeah.
only used the Domotz bots for alerting because it was so much faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it would alert me sometimes, 5 minutes before, a server, alert came from my RMM. So
Yeah. I mean, I look at that as we're a purpose-built tool for monitoring the network and that network infrastructure. So when changes on that network infrastructure occur, we know we want to alert you immediately. And there can be a big difference, in security aspect or awareness when a device gets on the network if you don't know about it immediately.
well, I've done that too. I've told this on the show before, but my medical office, they're about 15 minutes from me,
Mhm.
and we started to do all the stuff that needs to be done for HIPAA compliance and all of
Yep.
that stuff. And so I've turned on, a lot of the features for alerts, and including the printers
Yep.
that are supposed to be, always available and stuff because they do printing from iPads for their, uh, all their little medical slips and lab stickers and stuff like that. So I need to get alerted if one of those printers goes down.
Mhm.
Well, one day their copy company showed up. They managed the printers and they were swapping out a printer. Well, I didn't know that that's what they were doing,
Okay.
but a printer went offline, and I happened to be the first time. That happened twice. So the first time I was actually there on site on another floor, and I came down to see what was going on, and the guy was there, and he goes, "Oh, you knew that it went down?" I said, "Yeah, I knew it went down."
Heck yeah, I did.
He goes, "Oh, that's very interesting." And then the second time, I was at my office, and they have a doctor that brings in their own radiology equipment, and they have 2 laptops and desktops that they manage, but they're on our network. So, of course, I made them put all of our stuff on them as well. And one time, the machine name went offline, and it was on the Wi-Fi side of the network, and it came back up on the LAN side of the network.
Oh.
And so I called over and I said, "Are you guys moving a station? What are you doing?" And they're like, "No." I said, "Yeah, you are." I said, "And I've got managed switches, so I can tell, which switch it's connected to, which
Yep.
port." I'm like, "No, over in suite 330, they just put up a new machine for a laptop that was supposed to be in suite 320." And so, of course, they go walking over there. And needless to say, the tech was there. And he goes, oh, yeah, we hooked up this desktop. We named it the same name and, had to connect it with the wire. And they're like, your IT guy can see that?
Nice.
And they're like, that's
Nice.
impressive.
You
So,
know, what's in my mind, what was awesome, and I don't know if a lot of service providers are aware of this, but you mentioned with the printer, the first example, that you got the notification. Domotz has a mobile app, right, which will go on your Apple or Android devices, but when you can set up alerts to do push notifications to you. So in your case where you were on site, you could absolutely get an alert via your phone to say, hey, this change just happened.
yeah,
Right?
I have it on my phone and my tablet.
Yes, awesome.
That's how I got that. And with the printer, I also set up some of the OID codes.
Yeah.
So that I can be alerted when their toner's low.
Well, so Marvin, have you seen some of the new pre-configured sensors that we've done for these printers and for NAS drives? Have you
No,
seen
why don't you show me?
We can do that. Why don't if you want to share my screen?
Yep, we can do that.
So I think for those that are familiar with Domotz, they're probably very familiar with the UI that I'm showing here. This is what we call our.
You've made a change to that as well, so we need to talk about that.
We have. So this is our Sites Explorer page. We call it Sites Explorer because if you remember, I mentioned that this is a multi-tenant type view, and I'm in kind of a test and demo account, so forgive all the red that's showing here, and I'm in Salt Lake City, so let's just hone in on kind of these areas here. This essentially is showing all of the sites or the agents, right? These collectors that have been deployed. Each dot that is on the map represents a site. And in particular, let's go to this IoT lab, which just for those that are familiar with this, it's my house, okay? But we call it the IoT lab because I have just so many gadgets in here. But what I wanted to show you with this, when it comes to pre-configured sensors, is when we look at all the devices that are here. So I should have an HP printer here. Ooh, one thing that I just realized I changed this because I put it on Wi-Fi. But let's see if this will show this here. It might be out of date. No, it's showing it still, but it is out of date. So I have to apologize because I took this offline from a wired connection and I put it on Wi-Fi and I didn't set it up again. But here's what happens. When we discover devices that are on the network, if we have enabled SNMP through those devices, which I'm just using standard V2 authentication on this, you can add what's called pre-configured sensors. So we will look to see, especially with printers, so things like this HP printer or Brother printers. Let's do this. I think if I go to the office that I'm in now, we have a Brother printer here where I can show you this. Yeah, so this one's online, so this should be accurate. So same thing, right? We can see even more information with this because we have more data available to us out of this printer. But here we can see like the cyan levels, right? The magenta levels, right? We actually can see the ink or the toner levels of these. And in this case, we're also looking at like the usage when it comes to the drum and such. So this, I think, is an awesome way to understand what's going on within some of these more commonly used systems. In fact, let's go.
I'm going to say, when I started doing that, and we haven't talked in a while because I had to go and manually find these codes for the printers that I had set up, probably a year or so ago.
Yeah, and it was a little bit more tedious, right? You could get there, you could enter the OIDs, but now that we're discovering some of these things automatically for you, we think it's just way more powerful.
Yep.
Here's an example of a NAS drive. So Synology, and I haven't looked at much data here lately, but a couple things that we pull now are like disk information, right? So this is a 4 or 5, I believe it is a 4-disk system. We look at the volumes and the partitions that are associated with these things. We can grab data like what the temperature of the system is. In fact, this is interesting, right? This is really important as part of the CIS controls. You'll notice that we show the firmware version, but we also, through SNMP, see that there's a firmware upgrade available. So this is something I need to actually go off and do, which is do a firmware upgrade. We also can enter manual information if we want, such as just seeing the storage size and how that's changed. Right. So lots and lots of powerful things here. In fact, Marvin, I'm going to show you one more thing while I'm here. I'm showing you this inventory page. This is something new for people that haven't seen us in a while. This is a fast way to look across all the devices that you manage. In fact, you'll notice just in my demo account, I have about 2,200 devices that are here. I can search for all these devices in this one page. In this example, though, I want to look at, I think if I look up ESXi, maybe I have to type ESXi, there we go. This is a virtual machine that we have. We can go view the details of this. What I wanted to show you is this really cool feature now. So when it comes to virtual machines, or when it comes to Windows-based machines, or even Linux-based machines, we can start to dive into the operating system a little bit more. See things like what version of firmware this is running, what its architecture is. We can look at the physical and the logical disks of these devices. This happens to be a server that we've hosted, where we have different virtual machines running on it. So you can see at the bottom here, all the information we can start to aggregate from these machines as well. So Domotz has made a lot of changes when it comes to not only monitoring the network, but monitoring the devices that are on the network and looking at how those devices may be affecting your network connectivity, or may be affecting the systems as a whole.
Wow. So these are all things that I know when we first talked, I asked about some of these things, and you guys must have been keeping them in your back pocket.
No. When we, so one of the things I love about this company, we really pride ourselves in listening to the customers, looking at what their pain points are, and trying to figure out how we can take our expertise and build in some of these aspects and ease of use. Our development team, and I'm actually proud to say this, we're about 60 people strong now, and of the 60, about 45 of them are developers, right, and engineers. And that we think is really important, because it allows us to develop solutions, right? Develop this software, develop this user interface quickly, and make changes as needed. So when you make a request for something, we can come back in and work on that. That's something that I think is great.
Okay. Let me do one quick thing and let the listeners know, if you're listening to this by audio and you're like, man, I wish I could see this, this will be saved on the YouTube. And if you go to itbusinesspodcast.com and find this episode, there will be a link to the video so that you can go back and find this on the YouTube, and you can see exactly what we're talking about. Of course, thank you for listening by audio, but just in case you want to see what we're doing here. And I want to address what's happened in our chat. We do have some people watching live. The second question I can answer.
Oh, good.
Chris has asked, does Domotz allow you to log in other devices like network equipment, VoIP phones, and such, like Oversee? And Oversee is a product from another company, Snap AV. And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
I use this all the time, especially for my managed switches. I actually have a couple of, now I've not done it with the Synology devices, which you guys are big partners with now, it looks like.
Well, Domotz does have, you can actually run our collector, or our software, that agent, on a Synology NAS drive. You can run it on a QNAP NAS drive. You can run it on a Windows machine, right? There's lots of ways in which you can deploy that agent, which is a lot of flexibility. This question about connectivity is a very good one. One of the things that we do when we discover all the devices that are on the network, we also look for which ports are available for management. So again, I'm showing on the desktop app here, where in this particular managed switch, we've discovered that SSH, Telnet, and port 80 are available as connections. I click the connect button to port 80. What it's going to do here is it's going to create a secure connection between my laptop, the cloud, and this device. And so when I enter in my super secret credentials here, you'll see that I've made a secure connection from my office happens to be in my house, as I said, but to this network switch where I can now go in and configure the system. We can do this for any device on the network. And in fact, one of the stronger values that we do add is the ability to do what we call VPN on demand. So here I made a reverse SSH connection, right? A secure tunnel to this device, okay? But if I wanted to put my laptop as if it was on a VPN connection, right, directly on site, I can do that through Domotz as well, where I turn that Domotz agent into a VPN host. So that's something that's a pretty cool feature as well.
Yep. And let's see. So I mentioned switches, obviously anything with a browser interface that you connect to, like, printer interfaces, the Synology boxes, cameras, all of that.
Speaking of cameras, right? Let's dive into a camera, because this is a cool feature that a lot of people don't realize. So again, I'm showing this on the screen, but when we discover a video security camera that has OnViv capabilities, we will tell you not only is that this thing is online, but you can grab a snapshot directly from that stream of the video and you can see what's going on. So here, this is the front of my house. You can see this nice mountain that's in front, and you can also see that it's about to rain. So
now I see the test video streaming. So that's pretty interesting.
So if you do that, right, this is not a high res image. It's back to, because we're on this webinar, it's going to be even lower quality. But why do we do this, right? This is to show you that it's actually streaming and a real live video, right? The assumption is that this is not meant to capture video, right? This is not your video security or your VMS software, but this is telling you that the device itself is actually streaming video, right? It's online, it's pointed in the direction you expect, and it is streaming video on the network.
Very useful if a customer calls and says the cameras are down.
Oh yeah. Well, let's go back. Let's go back to a use case here, right? Making you look like a hero. Okay, Marv. You should be setting up alerts on these cameras, because cameras are critical devices for businesses, right? Your cameras are being used for insurance purposes. They're being used to prevent theft, right? In point of sale type environments. Worst thing that can happen is an incident occurs at a particular venue. They go back to look at the cameras to see what happened, and all of a sudden they found that the camera was offline for 2 weeks. Right? By setting a proactive alert on this type of camera, you are providing a service to your customer. And if it ever goes offline, even if you didn't own the camera, right, you're going to tell your customer, right, that the security company may need to come out and fix it, but you at least have awareness that this thing went offline, and you're saving them from potential lawsuits. So I think this is such a valuable way to add services for your customers. And I would hope that you guys are monetizing that in some way. So I think this is just super useful.
And just to remind everybody that when the Domotz box is out and discovering stuff, there are categories where it will automatically tag them as important devices.
Yes.
So, servers and stuff like that. It'll say, these are going to be important. So these are the things you're going to monitor by default. And I believe the standard alerts are set up on those already.
So in Domotz's case, we do not actively set any alerts. Right?
Okay.
We leave that up to you. But we do tell you when devices are important based on our classifications. You can change that, right? You can make them not important, or you can go and say, I want to make these types of devices important. So you can do all that. But we have chosen not to automatically set alerts, because we recognize that every job that is done is different.
Right.
Now, that being said, one feature that we added, Marv, which I think is extremely useful. Let's go to devices. In fact, let's go ahead and just take like Cisco SG350s. So of all the sites that I'm monitoring, right, these are the ones that have SG350s in them. Okay, so let's say that this Draper Office agent on router in this SG350 is one that I have pre-configured I like the way it's set up and I want to use it as a template. Okay. I can click this. I can see how the settings are set up in Domotz, but more importantly, I can export all these settings from this particular device. It saves it as a JSON file. Right, I'll just save it to the desktop here. You can open it up. You can look at the XML. You can see how it actually looks. But now, let's say that I either have a new job site that is using this SG350, or let's say that I want to change how another site is. So let's look at this ADCHR site. Okay, it has these SG350s. If I wanted to import those exact same device settings, I can just go to this import button. I can select this JSON file, right? And I can transfer that. I'm not going to do it in this case because I don't want to mess up anything, but it's a very easy way to template, right? Alerts, a template SNMP sensors, template names, right? That I can transfer those easily to, many devices all within seconds.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a cool feature. This is something that I think the team did that was really, really smart because it made it easier when you go to onboard a new customer or when you go to deploy an agent to a new site to make it just super simple to discover devices as well as just set up all of the pre-configured alerts that you have.
Sweet. I knew about the exporting and importing, but I didn't realize you could do it to multiple at a time. So
you can, yeah.
Shame.
You can. In fact, one of the very common things, right, is to understand when a site goes offline. You can do that exact same thing here. So you can come in. Well, actually, let me go to a site that I own. So like this IoT lab, right? I can come in here and set shared alerts on the network going offline, new devices being discovered, right? I can have these automatically go into my ticketing system based on how I have my PSA tool configured with Domotz. So lots of power in this.
Nice. So let me get to the second question before we go on, just so that we make sure we don't miss it. But Diana asked, do you have a suggestion for a feature / alert that we should use to monitor for VoIP performance?
That's yeah.
Goes back to when I was talking about, monitoring the firewall and all of that stuff.
Yeah. In fact, let's go look at this Draper Office that's on a router. You'll notice that we've got a Cisco tab here. If we click on Cisco, we have not only that SG350, but we have some voice over IP phones, right? So this one that's called Bobby's other phone. In fact, we talk about provisioning of networks. So let's talk about a couple things here. One is you'll see that I can create a secure connection right into this phone's system. So it'll bring it up. There you see it, right? I can go in and do whatever provisioning I need to do remotely. So that's one thing I can do. But you were asking about alerts, okay? In particular, we can, and I'll show the personal alerts page, you can set up alerts for when the system goes down, right? So if somebody unplugs the phone or it goes offline for whatever reason, definitely suggest you do that. You can also, to what Marvin was just talking about, you can come set up a round trip delay alert. And if the latency of this goes above a certain threshold, you absolutely can set that. So if I wanted to change this to say, okay, the latency ever goes above 35 milliseconds, or in Marvin's example, right, if I want to say if the packet loss ever goes above 50%, right, trigger an alert. These are the types of things that you should be considering, again, depending on the types of service you're providing, but this is absolutely what you should be looking at. Just as an example here too, since we're talking about round trip delay here, Marvin, this is actually where you started to look at this information. Here's the graph of the round trip delay, but I can even pull up the historical averages of this. Here, look at this. Great example right here, where in this blue field, where the average latency changed. Now, the question you have to ask is, why did this go from an average of, let's say, 2 to 3 up to somewhere like 5 or 6, right? There's probably something that got added in the network that is changing the behavior of this device, and we should be aware of that. For a voice over IP phone, honestly, a 2 millisecond difference doesn't make a difference. But if I started seeing this vary greatly, okay, or Marvin, to your point, if I started like on the right-hand side of this graph seeing packet loss, that's when we should start to be concerned.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, what I noticed on that page, I'll show you later off screen, was it was bright red across the screen. So, but it was weird, not enough to, and of course, I didn't have those alerts set up on that firewall either. So
Mhm.
that shame on me.
I probably have some areas where if I look at these devices where we can see
Well, if we
some
go
red
back up, yeah. So wherever you have that little red
right here.
exclamation point,
Yeah, these were probably wireless devices that disappeared.
right? But
Apple.
I saw one that was green, but it had an exclamation point above it.
Oh, was that? Let's look here. Oh, there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's what I was looking for. I was looking for that exclamation point, and I
Yes.
didn't see it. So I just went on by.
So this is a mobile phone, right? This is my iPhone. So I'm not surprised that we are starting to see packet losses, right? This is also where it kind of changed. Yeah, I'm not going to get much data with this. And the reason you're seeing it so high is because, I probably walked out of the office and came back, and Apple is notorious for changing their MAC addresses too, which is,
Yep.
part of the challenge. But you're exactly right. This is how you can use this tool to start to discover issues on the network.
Okay. All right. So besides the, inventory tab and some of the uh, built-in OID stuff and the SNMPs and all of that, what
Yeah.
else has been new? I know you guys have been adding a ton of
So let me tell you, while I'm on this inventory page and showing you this, let me say, and Marvin, you're getting an exclusive information here. Okay, we are adding a new tab at the top.
Oh,
So today you see sites and you see devices, but you're going to see in the next about 2 weeks, you're going to see a new tab come up called should be something like customers, okay, or organizations. Essentially, you're going to be able to sort your sites by your customers. So, Marvin, maybe you have a particular doctor or lawyer's offices that has multiple sites within your city or within your management. You can have that. You can have that customer, that organization set up, and then you can associate sites to that. The nice thing about that is you have the ability then to say, okay, I want to look at, let's say, Dr. Jones's offices and see the status of all those, right? It's going to be another way in which you can view your customers in a little bit cleaner, more organized way. That's something that we're bringing here in the next couple of weeks. I've seen a preview of it, and I really, really like it. It's just
so my
easy.
customers with multiple locations, I can group those now
Yes,
and see them.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, there we go.
Now you can somewhat do that through the customer ID,
Yeah, but it's not as
but
nice.
but it's not as nice. Exactly. I think having this on a separate tab is going to be really powerful. So that's one thing. Another thing that I want to point out, and this is something that we've had for about I'd say 6 to 8 months now, is this monitoring dashboard. This monitoring dashboard is actually pretty amazing, and I don't think many service providers realize the power of these dashboards. So let me briefly describe the use case and how you can utilize these. First of all, when you look at this dashboard, you're going to see when you first log into Domotz, and if you haven't configured anything, you're going to see a fairly blank screen. But what you can do is add dashboards. Okay, you can have multiple dashboards on here, as you can see here, based on how you want to organize your environment. Okay, this tool. You could have these dashboards by customer. You could have it by manufacturer. You can have them by importance, right? Maybe importance of devices, importance of sites, importance of customers, right? There's many ways in which you can create these dashboards. But then within each dashboard, you can come in and add tables, okay? These tables can also be sorted by device type. You also can sort these by sensors. So when we talked before about looking at ink levels in printers, I can actually create sensor tables across all the devices in my account. Okay, so if you remember, I have about 2,200 devices in there. I can have one table that has all 2,200, or I can put very specific devices in there. but then I also can see information about each device. And this particular dashboard, which I've called Cisco, I can see just general data, as I've called it, about Cisco. So I'm looking at devices here that I pulled into this table. And in this case, I'm looking at round trip delay, right? RTD, the average latency. I have a column for temperature because Cisco switches, right, will often have the ability to interrogate the temperature. So I can see that. I can add more tables within these dashboards. So if I wanted to look at Cisco switches on one table and then Meraki WAPs on another, or here I put Cisco phones in another table, I can do all that. Okay. This, in my mind, is a way for you as a service provider to organize all the devices, all of your customer sites, all the organizations, right, in a very easy to use, quick to see table. And you have the ability then to sort it by status, sort it by performance, right? Sort it by ways in which makes sense to you on this data. So this is something that, Marvin, I don't know if you've had a chance to set this up in your environment.
So the short answer is I started to. I have one dashboard called servers.
Yeah.
I set it up about a month ago and haven't touched it since.
Well, we need to change that.
We do.
I think
I didn't know about the tables.
Yeah, I think you'll find that these tables, servers are a great example where I can put in information about the virtual machines. I can put in information about the partitions and the logical disks. You can start to sort. Let's do a hard drive or a NAS drive, excuse me, or a server where hard disk information, like such as free space, is critical. You can sort by which hard drives have either the most available space or the least amount of free space, and then you can take action on those, right? This is a way for you to prioritize some of the things you should care about, right? Or the activities. These tables are extremely powerful. There's a ton of data that you can put in them. It's just a matter of how do you as a service provider want to use them more efficiently.
We are definitely going to have to dig in deep because I knew some stuff was popping up and I just didn't make the time to go through and evaluate and look deeper into this. So we're going to probably I'm going to have you come back or, give me a private demo, I guess.
Happy to, I will say, just for any of your listeners, I want you guys to know that we have an onboarding team. We have some customer success teams. We are more than happy to get on the phone with you, do a Zoom call. We can share your environment. We can show our environments, right, and show you how to optimize this. In fact, we've created a few at our help.domotz.com on our website, right, kind of in our knowledge base. We've got some guides to help you with onboarding as well. And a lot of these types of things, we go over this, but happy to give you a personal demo.
All right. We'll look forward to that. And with that, I'm going to have to say we are going to have to end off the podcast here. But if you are joining us here on the show, live on the video, you can see along the bottom there, stay with us. We are going to have a post show where we will continue the discussion. If you are listening by audio, we apologize. But again, there will be a link on the webpage when you go to itbusinesspodcast.com and you can click to the video and catch out the rest. I will keep the post show on the video so you won't miss a thing. And I want to say, we had another thing pop up. Here's another question here. What is the add-on booster pack?
The add-on booster pack. Great question. So Domotz, right, with our standard plan, offers you several sensors, right? Hundreds of sensors that you can monitor. In fact, some of the pre-configured sensors that are out there, right? You get those for free. Marvin, we didn't talk about some of the newer custom driver capabilities where people can write JavaScript and enable that. If you're in an environment where you need to have more sensors to look at, or you need to add more API calls because you are possibly building your own dashboard, right? There's a lot of flexibility and capability of Domotz. If you need more data, The booster pack, right, an additional $10 a month allows you to get more data. And you can add those booster packs as needed on these environments. So even if you're doing some sort of troubleshooting and diagnostic and you need to have more sensors, you can do that. One of the things that Domotz does is it provides flexibility in how often sensors are interrogated, right? Or how often you look at sensors. And if you need to have more sensors faster, you can add a booster pack as well.
Nice, nice. Well, folks, there you have it. Much more than we bargained for in this show. Tons of features, lots of things you can do with, well, it used to be the little black box,
Yeah.
but now you can deploy it just about anywhere on Synology and QNAP and other devices. And we're going to put a link to the site, domotz.com, DOMOTZ.com. We've been talking with JB Fowler. JB, thank you for coming on the show. It's been too long. We're going to have to do this again.
I agree, Mark. I agree.
Will. And folks, when I have them back, I'll let you know. And that is going to do it for this episode. I thank you for downloading and subscribing, and we'll be back with another episode real soon. But until then, holla. All right. Audio is done. My goodness gracious. We should have done an outline.
Did we not talk about everything we needed to talk about, Marv?
I think we did, yeah. Well, we probably could have talked more about the CIS controls.
Yeah. I tried to touch on those. You're right.
I did have a question. So I had a situation last week.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I've been doing with my boxes, because I have been installing the agent on my Synology boxes because I've been deploying a lot more of those. So I have all these boxes. And what I've done is I've designated 2 of them as my audit boxes.
Sure.
So I've been getting one-off calls from either other techs and their clients to come out and do an assessment or an audit of their network and kind of give them an overview of what do they have and what types of problems are they having and what can I solve. So Domotz with my Net Ally tools, we go out there and we spend either half a day or a full day. And I just take the box and I set it up for that site for the day, put my box on and leave it.
Yeah.
So I ran into a situation where for the first time, I had somebody with a network that was too big for the Domotz box.
Okay.
They were running a /18 network, and the Domotz box only went to a /22.
Yep. Sure.
Now, in this particular case, I just talked to the customer and said, you only have like 150 devices. Why do you even have that big a network? But they were doing some things on it. They had some old equipment. This was a network that goes back that they had to be on this weird IP scheme. But basically, we just said, look, you got to clean this up. You don't need that big a network anymore. The devices that they had that needed that special IP configurations were gone. So they're cleaning that up. But in terms of the Domotz box, I don't think I've ever talked about it because in my mind, well, we just VLAN it. But in this particular case, they went bigger than the 22 subnet. So my first question is, was there a reason with just the 22 or?
Yeah. There's definitely a reason for that.
Okay.
So first and foremost, let me make the statement that we can configure the Domotz agent to look at a /16. Okay. So that is possible. All right. Now, by default, okay, the Domotz agent, whether you're using a Windows machine or Synology NAS Drive, or you're using the little black box, by default, it's set up to a /22. The reason it's set up for that is because of the way in which we do ARP requests at layer 2 and the way in which we do ICMP requests on layer 3. Okay. We are continuously pinging these devices, once every 30 seconds. And if you start to get to larger networks, right, a /22 gives you 1,024 or so IP addresses.
Right.
Whereas when you go to a /16, it's actually 65,000 potential slots. you can imagine that if we're trying to do ICMP requests out to 65,000 devices, that it would cause problems on the network. So we had to implement a different mechanism by which we do that. We do have, like I said, we can configure the agent to do /22, but that really falls under a different plan because of the way in which Domotz works.
Okay.
You can, with the default device, given that it's a /18, you can configure the Domotz agent to emulate multiple VLANs, which will cover, right, really something more like a /20, /19. When you get to a /18, that would be the equivalent of, something like 16 VLANs that you would have to configure. At that point, it gets a little crazy, but it can be done. Okay.
Okay. That answered my question. Listen, my first thought is not many people I know need more than a 22.
Most of the time when people are setting up a /16, /18, /20, the reason they do that is really more for IP addressing schemes as opposed to sheer number of devices. They may put in the lower part of the range network infrastructure. They may take the middle of the range and do it for digital signage or AV equipment or automation systems. And then they have like one part of the range that is guest networks, right? So they never really consume all the IP addresses, but they know logically that if I have a device in this particular range, that it's this type of device.
Well, that's exactly what this person did. He knew, if it was on the .3 subnet, it was this. If it was on the .5, he knew that. But when we were trying to, troubleshoot everything, he had done all of this manually with static IPs. I was like, and, listen, in his mind, it worked just fine. And like I said, I think he needed it for some particular stuff back then.
Yeah.
But what he was doing currently, that's just extra work.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to make a change on the network. And the other reason I got that alert was on my NetAlly device. I was getting errors for the subnet mask.
Yeah.
Where devices that were actually properly configured were still producing an error.
And Domotz will show you when you are on, for instance, if it's configured, if the Domotz agent is configured for /22, but you're on a /18, Domotz will alert you to say, hey, we're only looking at this particular range. Be aware that your net mask is configured for a larger range, right? So
we saw that as soon as the box went up, boom, it was there.
So, I would encourage you or any of our listeners, right, that run into that situation, send a message to our support team, right? We can help you configure that box so that it can see that. If you're in a situation where you're always using large networks or you need to be on a /18, /16, whatever it is, we can talk about how we handle that through our enterprise pricing model. And it's in our enterprise pricing because it's usually enterprises that are dealing with that, not necessarily service providers.
All right. So, I'm going to skip the first part of this, but another question came up. Do you have any stories or features for people who install larger commercial audio video systems that go on the network?
Absolutely we do. So Domotz gets heavily used by commercial integrators or pro AV installers. And the reason being is because of the way in which we help configure as well as manage. I say manage, but let's just say monitor and remotely connect to AV systems. Okay, we showed you how you can connect right into those pages, but Domotz does an amazing job of looking at smart displays, looking at control systems. Okay, anything from Crestron, Savant, AMX, Extron, even Control4 systems. Right, we look at all those. And we do some really cool things like sharing or monitoring of CrestNet devices that those automation systems have. When it comes to digital signage or audio distribution systems, whether you're using advanced products like QSC or anything that has Dante, right, in it. We bring awareness of those devices. We can look at the large networks that those things are on, and we can help you understand latency issues. We can help you understand network diagnostic problems. One of the big differentiators of Domotz is that we truly are an enterprise-grade network monitoring tool. So we're going to give you a lot of capability when it comes to visualization of network problems in AV-based systems.
Now, when we first met, I think you guys actually talked about the fact that your start came from the commercial side. You technically weren't in the IT space. Is that correct?
It's true. In fact, it was actually the residential side.
Okay.
Right? So we were looking a lot back in 2015, 2016. Our founders were trying to solve a problem with respect to residential automation systems, right? Residential AV systems. And so that really was how we got started. The things that the founders recognized, and I think, nowadays anybody can see this, but there was a convergence of AV systems with the network, okay? And the networking tools that were out there for troubleshooting networks were just extremely complex. And we wanted to find a way in which we could help CEDIA installers and what then turned out to be commercial integrators or pro AV installers better troubleshoot networks when they weren't networking experts. A lot of these guys were installing equipment on enterprise grade networks, but they had no idea how to set them up or how to configure them. So we got our start there. Now, what we quickly realized, which was exactly what that question kind of was alluding to, now that there's more and more AV systems on the network, we realized that service providers, IT professionals, enterprises needed to have a better understanding of what all this AV equipment was doing on their networks. And so we started to tweak the tool so that it would work with the services and the tools that they already use in their environments. And I think this has made a big difference for service providers in understanding what's on the network.
I can tell you it's huge for me, and some of the other products that are out there, the NMS tools and the other, for the price point, it just wasn't a good entry level for me to do this. And this was something I could start with just, one or two boxes, see how it worked. And then all of a sudden, like I said, it was like, wow, it finds all this stuff. So I just immediately started rolling it out to every site I could. And it has made the visual aspect of seeing into a network remotely so much easier.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And we, depending on which industry you're in, whether you're looking at the residential industry, whether you're looking at commercial, whether you're looking at enterprise, I have no qualms about competing with the tools that are in that space that help with NMS. You mentioned Oversee earlier. Oversee, very well known in the residential space. The fact of the matter is that Domotz is an enterprise grade network monitoring tool, and we really focus on diagnostics and reliability, as well as the manufacturer agnostic approach that we take. In the enterprise space, you often see tools like PRTG, Logic Monitor, Zabbix, Nagios, right? Some of those are Zabbix and Nagios in particular, very open source, right? You're paying for support, not necessarily the free tool. But when you look at our pricing model that we have, it makes it extremely easy to deploy to every single customer that you do. And in fact, Marvin, the way you're using one of our boxes to go out and audit, right? It's worth it, right? It's worth it to use it for auditing.
Yeah. So I keep getting calls from Avik.
Sure. Yeah. Another competitor in the service provider space, right? The managed service provider space. Yeah.
And they keep asking me, hey, I'm at this point. No, I'm not leaving Domotz at any, time soon. I'm
glad to hear that, Marv.
What did Chris say? Reliable should never be used to describe that other company.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
Oh my. So let me see here. I was going to try to see if there were notes that I had about anything new, but I think you did hit on them. Being able to do the customers, that was huge.
Yep.
The integration. So I do integrate with IT Glue,
Yep.
even though there are some others that I could integrate with. I just figured IT Glue is probably the best for me, and then I integrate from IT Glue to some other stuff. So
So have you seen, I mean, I think if you've done the integration with IT Glue, you know that we do a two-way synchronization, which is actually pretty unique. In fact, none of the integrations that IT Glue has had that capability, but Domotz, right? There's certain things that we should be the master of the data, such as the IP address, the MAC address. Okay. But there's other information that IT Glue should be the master of their information. And
right.
so we can share data and you can do two-way synchronization, which I think is very appropriate and a cool integration that our team did.
Yep, I've gone in there and I've set up the automatic sync, and took me a little time to do the field matching
Mm-hmm.
to get
Yeah.
that right, but all that was great, and that was nice. And there were some other ones that I looked at. So it looks like you're adding. Oh, you've got some more ticketing systems in.
We're constantly adding ticketing systems. So I think one of the more recent one was Halo as a PSA tool. We've
Mhm.
done some commercial integration tools and even some more general tools like Zendesk. So we are definitely adding more and more. Under our integrations page, you'll see the documentation tools. Um, One of the things that I mentioned briefly, Marvin, but the custom drivers where you can write your own JavaScript to integrate not only with devices on the network, but also being able to see out of the network and get data back in and make decisions or run automation is such a cool feature. Now it's a more advanced feature. I'm not gonna try to hide that.
Hey, you're speaking, and my eyes are doing this because I'm not going to do JavaScript. I don't even do PowerShell. I mean, I do enough to get by. I've got my core set of scripts that I can run, but creating my own, no, not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Well, like I said, it's more of an advanced tool, but I just want people to know that if you want to get really crazy, you can do some amazing things with Domotz.
If you guys want to put together like a core set, like here's the 10 best JavaScripts that you can use, I'm there.
Trust me. So our team has built out a GitHub where people
Oh,
can start to populate their own scripts if they want. We've got things like checking the status of Zoom. Okay. So if you want to look at the Zoom servers and see
oh,
how they're
really?
running,
Now
yes,
you're telling me I could have used this a couple of
yeah.
weeks ago.
So that's one. You can look at certificates on servers, right, to see what their dates are, whether they've expired or when they're expiring. There's some cool features like that that the team has started to put together, and we're just continuously adding to it. So this is my opportunity to say, if there's any of your listeners that feel like they want to have, some sort of script, talk to our support team, support@domotz.com, and make the request because our team is actively adding more and more scripts. We're also looking for people that want to share the scripts that they've created. So it's cool. It's
All
really
right.
cool.
So you said GitHub. So is that active now? Is that public that we can
It
see? Or
is. It is. And I don't have it memorized, but if people email support@domotz.com, or I can send it to you here after the show, Marv,
okay.
and you can post it if you want to your page. So
All
I'll
right.
find that.
That'll be sweet. All right.
I like how you say you don't do PowerShell, but then you got all excited about GitHub. Yeah, I see where you are.
Well, again, if somebody else writes it, I'll add it to my stack.
Love it. I love it.
I'm just
Okay.
not going to go create it myself. So all right. So yeah, it looks like we've hit everything. Um,
Good. I've enjoyed
the
this.
topology thing, the network topology, that's I was going to say that's gotten better.
Oh yeah. So one of the changes, you're exactly right. It's gotten better. And I should have mentioned this, but before Domotz was using our own algorithms and we were using RFC protocols for determining what I would consider to be parent-child relationships of devices in the network. But as all of your listeners probably know, there's this amazing protocol called LLDP, right? Link Layer Discovery Protocol, which gives you a lot of this information. We still use our algorithm to determine these relationships, but we augment that with LLDP information to improve how things show up. One more thing that I will tell you about changes that we made to the topology, which this has been a request from our users. Often you will find that devices, right, single devices may have multiple interfaces to them. They may have multiple NICs, or the single NIC may be represented as multiple interfaces, especially in the case of virtual machines, right? When you're putting VMwares on or VMs on servers. Domotz now has the ability to bring in those multiple interfaces into a single entity so that your topology actually shows up better.
So of course I just went in here because I hadn't been in a while, and I'm looking, and you can actually click on the link in the topology and it'll give you the information, bandwidth, errors, discards.
Yep. Yeah.
I got to pay more attention.
I think that tells me that I need to do a better job of making sure you read our newsletters.
I don't think I get your newsletter.
Oh, Marv, man, we got to have everybody sign up for that. So.
Apparently I'm out of the loop here. You hook me up with Shanna, I get all their stuff.
I told you not to block domotes.com, Marv.
That 404 error when I get to your site. Wow. So, okay. So there's a bunch of other stuff in here I'm missing. All right. We're going to have to definitely stay in touch. But I did notice, I did notice the stuff. I noticed the dashboard. I noticed the GUI change, the inventory, the inventory was nice.
Yeah.
Being able to find how many devices I've got across all my clients, which model of firewall, boom. I mean,
I will point out that we have one particular customer that monitors over 5,000 sites. They have tens of thousands of devices that they monitor. In fact, it's hundreds of thousands of devices. But one of the things that they can use this dashboard for now is they can go in and look for an exact name of a device. It searches across those hundreds of thousands and gets them the results within seconds of the devices they care about. But then they can filter by things like firmware version. Okay. So they can see, okay, it's these devices in this region that we need to focus on first or do updating to. We've made so many changes to this dashboard that allows it to be faster, and have the data that you care about at your fingertips. It's just, I'm so amazed. And frankly, if I could use the word blessed, to be working with such an amazing engineering team that can do these types of things.
All right. Now, we didn't talk about this, although you did mention $21 a month per box.
Yeah.
Which has only been a $2 increase since I've been with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
With all these new features and all the things rolling out, I mean, I got to anticipate that there's going to be another price increase at some point.
Not that I'm aware of. So,
okay.
So this last $2 price increase that we had, I mean, what's happened during the pandemic, right? The inflation and all that stuff. We had never, for the service that we haven't had any price increases. Okay. So that we've had different plans that have been enabled, but the $19 standard plan that we have, this was the first price increase that we did. And it absolutely was because of the inflation and the way markets, the costs of our services have gone up from hosting the clouds. The cost of the box went up, right? It used to be a $99 box and it's now $129 on Amazon. Those were just necessary changes given the environment, which is really unfortunate. But what we do plan to do, Marv, I mean, you noticed the booster pack, right? There will be capabilities that may be enabled in the booster pack that aren't enabled in standard plans. But for the most part, we think that we're priced correctly and we're priced very competitively so that people want to deploy Domotz at each one of their customer sites, right? It just becomes part of the tool stack that you use. That is our mission.
That's what I do. I mean, it's part of my network equipment charge. I don't even, it's not even a question. It's not a place where they can uncheck it if they want. It's it goes in there.
It's there. Yeah. And that's the right way to do it, right? I mean, I'm going to say it this way. While it is seen as a cost to you, I hope that you also recognize it as a way to save labor, right? To save truck rolls or on-site support, and to be more proactive with your customers. So that's the beauty of this in my mind.
Well, it has definitely saved money. I mean, just the fact of, down alerting, for one. We didn't even talk about the fact that you guys have built in Wake on LAN.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, that alone, me trying to configure that with whatever service I was using before, I had another system administrator tool that I would, have to install locally on a server or box or something there. And then I had to always update the device name and the MAC addresses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Here, it's just there.
Yeah.
And if the name changes, it's done. I don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
These are crackers.
Love it. Love it. So.
All right. Okay, we're coming up on 9:30 here. I see we still got some people in the chat. Any last questions, folks, before we end off here? Thank you guys for hanging out. JB, thank you for staying.
Yeah, thank you, Marv. I appreciate this opportunity. I mean, you've been great to work with. I appreciate the positive comments, the thank yous. Those are great. I hope that we can continue to keep those kudos coming, right? And I want to reciprocate that by doing our best for you guys. I really believe in the golden rule and treating others like I want to be treated, and I hope that we as a company, right, show that.
Well, you guys have definitely done that, and I thank you for that, and hope that we continue a very happy, blessed partnership going forward. So,
very good. Very good. Thank you, Mark.
All right. Well, folks, thanks for hanging out with us. We're going to stop the stream here, and thank you all for being here, and go get your Domotz box. I just put a link in the chat, so use my link and buy a Domotz.
Buy Domotz.
See you, folks.